Coming up on the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast.
I guarantee that if you start eating more food, if you have a lot of weight to lose and you're eating 1100 calories, if you somehow get up to, you end up, getting up to like 2500 calories or 3000 calories, and you at the same time are doing all the other lifestyle practices that I just talked about, sleeping and managing your stress and exercising and moving your body and all that fun stuff. Like maybe you put on a few extra pounds of fat, but you're starting from 3000 calories as opposed to 1100 calories, right? And if you have a lot of weight to lose, you need to cut out a lot of food to get there. And you can't do that from 1100 calories, right? So your hormones and everything is going to be optimized eating enough proper amount of food. And so you put yourself in this state where you're like, you're primed to start losing weight.
Hello, and welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I'm Brian Grin, and I'm here to give you actionable tips to get your body back to what it once was 5, 10, even 15 years ago. Each week, I'll give you an in-depth interview with a health expert from around the world to cut through the fluff and get you long-term sustainable results. This week, I interviewed Primal Health Coach Ryan Baxter. Ryan explains his journey into optimizing his hormones, overcoming thyroid issues, and improving his gut health. We also discuss the importance of eating more to become healthier, how to start obstacle races, the importance of grip strength, the many benefits of walking, and his one tip to get your body back to what it once was. Really enjoyed my interview with Ryan. I know you will too. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the show. All right, welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. My name is Brian Grin, and I have Ryan Baxter on the show. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Brian. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the opportunity to be on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. First heard your episode with Brad Kearns, and Brad's a good friend of mine, so thought it'd be great to have you on the show.
Yeah, it was great for Brad to make the introduction and connect us. So I'm happy to be here. Brad's a great guy, great friend.
Yeah. And I know you've done a few different podcasts with him. Maybe for my audience, give them a little background of, what you're up to day to day and so, sort of what got you into the health realm.
Yeah, I'll try to keep the story kind of short and sweet so we can get to some more interesting content. But like I was mentioned to you before we started recording, I'm a software engineer. So I'm your typical software engineer, like you imagine this nerdy kid, right? That was me growing up. So athletics and health weren't top of mind for me for the first 20 or so years of my life. But eventually, once I got out of college, I decided to pay a little bit of attention to it. My wife, at the time, my girlfriend she was doing like 5Ks and stuff like that. And that kind of got me interested in like, I would go to the gym, but I wanted to put something behind going to the gym. Just like going to the gym for no reason kind of seemed silly. And I was kind of just flailing around in the gym, not really knowing what I was doing. So, I have no background in athletics. I didn't really like the idea of running, but for some reason, obstacle course racing sounded really enticing to me. I think it was partly because it was out in nature, out in trails, and there was also like it wasn't just running; it was running with obstacles. So it was there was different components of fitness involved, and so it sounded interesting to me. I kind of dove right in, but I didn't know where to begin. I didn't have an endurance background at all. And at the time, I had started Googling, obviously, because that's what software engineers do, right? And came across Ben Greenfield. Started listening to his podcast because he was into obstacle course racing at the time, and then he had on this guy called Mark Sisson on this podcast. At the time, Brad and him had just released a Primal Endurance book, and so that kind of got me down this path of, this sounded like a great way to train and great way to feel yourself and all this other stuff, and kind of dove head in. And being a very detail-oriented type A type of person, I really got into it. And it worked, obviously the principles in that book, and I firmly believe in ancestral health and stuff like that. They worked, right? I mean, they got me. I was able to complete my obstacle course races. I did really good, or I did good enough for myself. But eventually, as I dove further and further into this, and I started going harder and harder and harder into both training and health and diet and whatnot, I went too far and got myself in a little bit of trouble. I was not eating enough to match the energy expenditure that I was putting out. I was really into endurance. I was just ended up with low thyroid, low testosterone, a couple of gut bugs, candida and C. diff, and my mood was terrible at the time. I was traveling a lot for work. I was literally flying around the world, several times a year. I had a young infant daughter, so a lot of life stress and circadian disruption, and just it all kind of compounded. And I kind of just I went to my doctor, and he was like, "Oh, you're the spitting image of health. Like you're young, you're super lean, you're active, blah blah." Blah. And I was like, "Well, I feel like absolute garbage." I don't know if I can swear, but garbage. And he's like, "No, you're fine." He didn't run a single blood test. And so I eventually came across, listening to another podcast, I came across Chris Kelly from Nourish, Balance, Thrive. At the time, he was working with Dr. Tommy Wood. And I connected with them, and they kind of got me, ready to ship, per se, right? And show me kind of what I was doing wrong and how maybe you could incorporate a lot of these ancestral health practices, but still do some not necessarily ancestrally aligned physical activity. That kind of got me down the path. And after I spent a long time trying to get my health back to where I was satisfied, I decided that I want to help other people. And so I got my health coach certification from the Primal Health Coach Institute, and started health coaching people and sharing my knowledge and trying to help other people that are both in similar situations to me or in completely different situations to me. And I've been doing that part-time now for 6 or so years. So it's kind of the short and sweet background of myself here.
And what year was that around when you started?
When I started to feel like absolute garbage, it was around 2016.
Okay.
Around then. I probably got connected with Chris Kelly and Dr. Tommy Wood around 2016, 2017, around there. I had just kind of finished my last obstacle course race for the year, and was chatting with my wife, and I was just like, I don't feel good. And she's like, I know you don't feel good. And so we decided to do something about it at that point. So starting to affect my family life and stuff like that, and my work life, and that was a big awakening moment for me. So at that point, decided I need to do something.
So you had these compounding stressors that sort of just added up over time. Huh?
Yeah, it was interesting because, I think if I had to sum up what got me, down the wrong path, was that I was consuming. I love to consume information. I love to learn. I'm a constant learner. Podcasts, books, Audible, all that stuff. And I was consuming all this information around ancestral health and keto and paleo and primal and all this stuff. And, a lot of the people who create content, they create really great content, but it's targeted towards the majority of people. And at the time, I was not in that majority, right? I was not an overweight, inactive person eating a standard American diet. I was an extremely active, already very lean, person who was already eating a very healthy diet. And I was just I was applying that information in a context that was not correct, right? I was trying to restrict, and be more hardcore paleo, more hardcore keto, and more hardcore intermittent fasting, and blah blah blah. When I really should have been doing a lot of the opposite. I didn't know, I didn't understand that, at the time. So I think that would kind of sum up how I got myself into a little bit of a hole there.
And I'm assuming you eventually got blood work done. I mean, obviously you didn't feel good, and you said your doctors didn't, or your doctor didn't do any blood tests. But did you just do that
Yeah.
on your own?
No, so when I got connected with Chris Kelly and Dr. Tommy Woodard from Nourish Balance Thrive, I they ran like all the tests, like everything. I had like the most extensive blood work done. The number of vials of blood that came out of my arm was amazing. I had urine tests, I had stool tests, I had, all kinds of things that were done at that point. So yeah, lots of blood work. And obviously it came back. It was probably no surprise to them because like when I was listening to Chris Kelly on the podcast I was listening on, he was like describing the type of people that he worked with, and he was like I felt like he was talking to me. It was like you were like describing me to a T. So I'm sure when I showed up, him and Dr. Wood probably already knew exactly what that blood work and all those tests were going to come back as, and yeah, it was not necessarily a pretty sign.
Yeah, I hear that. And, blood work now, it's like, I feel like, for one thing, I don't actually have like a general doctor that I go see that much now anymore. Like, I feel like taking, not to say that that's right or wrong. I think it's probably good to have
Yeah.
a general practitioner to go to. But as far as just getting full blood panels, there's a lot of companies that have come out. I know, like Merrick Health, Nourish Balance Thrive. Do you
Yeah.
continue to get your blood work done through them, or do you just, how do you go about doing that?
No, what I mean, once I got my health to a point where I was satisfied, we kind of, I ended the relationship with Nourish Balance Thrive, obviously.
Yeah.
But I had gotten so many blood draws during that time, course of several years, that I knew exactly what I could request on a blood panel and see what that looks like.
Okay.
And so I've done several. Now I have a doctor that I work with locally that he's very open to my way of thinking, and is very accepting of that stuff, and is a very open-minded person. And so um, I can go to him and say, I want these things on this blood draw, and he's like, okay, sounds good to me, right? And part of that's because I end up he gives me a discount on blood draw, but I end up paying out of pocket for it anyway. So at the end of the day, he doesn't have to bill it through insurance. It's just severely discounted. So I get my blood work now through him, but before I got connected with him, I would just request it on my own. And there's, like you said, there's several different sites now that you can go to in almost every state to request your own blood work.
Yeah.
And so, and I think, and I also think that, and I think that, we don't need to get so extensive with our blood work. I think if you even get like a basic panel that costs, $100 maybe, which I understand can be cost prohibitive for some people, but is also something that is within reach for a lot of people, especially if we're talking about like your health. I think, $100 investment is not that bad. But you can learn a lot just by looking at that. And obviously you need someone to interpret that stuff, but the cost to get the data is not that, and it's accessible. So like you can request it yourself if your doctor won't do it for you. So
Yeah. And so 2016, you started to, obviously, well, when did you start making changes? Like 2017, and
yeah,
maybe
2017.
maybe take us through that journey. You went from,
Yeah.
sort of this primal paleo to.
Yeah. So I'm still, I would still consider myself uh, someone who eats primal. Yeah, I've never given up on that. I think that ancestral health, that model, while I don't think that we should like literally go back and live like cavemen, I do think that the mismatch between our genetics and our modern environment has a lot to do with a lot of the health problems that we see today. So I do think that model provides a good framework for everyone to achieve optimal health in. And it's just, you need to customize it, which is what I was kind of getting at before. You need to apply the right context, or take a look at the context in which you're living, your goals, etc., and customize it to fit that approach, right? So basically what I did is, instead of trying to, a lot of the work that I've done since that time is really just trying to figure out what the right approach is for me and my goals in that time. And my goals have shifted over the course of the years. Used to be very heavy into endurance stuff, as I was saying, but now I'm less so into endurance and kind of occasional endurance, but more like into strength training. I've gotten really into grip work and stuff like that. So, but regardless, a lot of what I did was literally, there were supplements involved, and like especially for some of the gut stuff to kind of kill off the candida and C. diff and stuff like that, there were some supplements that I took for a while to try and correct that stuff. But 95% of the things that I did was literally just trying, like sleeping, like getting my circadian rhythm back in line, like, like, trying to limit the type of travel that I was doing, eating more food, eating, carbohydrates, eating more, right? Like, still ancestral, a whole food diet, which I think that's what I like to say is, like, we start at a whole foods diet and we go from there. So, single ingredient foods, and just eating more of that stuff. Like, that was probably one of the number one things that I had to do, just to match the energy expenditure that I was putting out from exercising. Stress was a big thing for me. It still is a battle for me. I think that there's one thing that I struggle with, it is stress. And so I've learned to, meditation has been a big thing for me. Journaling has been a big thing that I've incorporated into my life since then. Different things around sleep. I think I still, I wouldn't say that I'm like a sleep guru or anything like that, but I get good quality 8 hours of sleep every night. And that is important to me, and I prioritize that. And so, like, there's nothing, I don't have some kind of fancy thing that I did to fix my health, or like sexy thing that's going to sell a million online books. It was just like, I need to better align the concepts of ancestral health to the context in which I was trying to perform and live my life. And, so I just had to switch things up a little bit. Right.
Yeah. And I know one of the things you talked to Brad about was consuming more. Maybe walk us through that. I have actually gone through that myself. I believe you added about 700 calories on.
Yeah. So, it's kind of interesting because interesting. We're going to talk about this because I just finished up a cut, or I'm finishing up a cut right now, and I've dropped a whole bunch of weight because I had to make weight for a grip competition. So,
oh wow.
I kind of went back in the other direction over the past few months, but I think the we've been so ingrained around, when you want to become healthy, what do? You restrict food, right? You just restrict, right? It seems universal, no matter what diet you believe in, or if you follow a diet at all. Like, it's like, what do you want to do to lose weight? Well, you got to restrict something, right? And to a degree, right, the way you lose weight is you eat less calories, right? I mean, you have to balance that calorie. As much as people hate calories in, calories out, like, at the end of the day, you somehow need to manipulate that formula so that you're burning more than you're expending. And there's various ways to do that. And I 100% agree that there's a million nuanced things about that, like hormones and timing and types of foods and all this other stuff plays a role. But at the end of the day, like, we're trying to manipulate that formula a little bit. And so I think that people get so stuck into that mindset that they constantly use that as the way to lose weight, right? And they're always restricting and always eating less, right? And that is appropriate for some people at some times, and then other people, I think, they might benefit from going in the other direction. I recently wrote a blog post not too long ago about why you should before you begin trying to lose weight, why you should eat more food before you do that, right? And people online will talk about, well, you know, you'll hear on Instagram the whole concept of reverse dieting, speeding up your metabolism, blah, 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 blah. And I think maybe some of that is true. I think that some people can eat so little that they eventually slow them. I mean, it happens, right? Metabolic adaptation is a proven thing in the research. You will slow your metabolism as you eat less and lose weight, and that's just a natural side effect of losing weight, right? That's going to happen. But I think the magic behind eating more food for most people is that they they put themselves in a spot where they're not trying to lose weight from eating a very small amount of food. Right. So like you're already in a spot where you're like, I'm already restricting and the scale's not going down and blah, 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 and I just need to cut back more and more. And then eventually you can't go any further. Like you can't eat, if you're already eating one meal a day and you're not at the body composition you want to be at, what are you supposed to do? Like,
Right.
ask yourself, like you starve yourself, like you have to go in the other direction eventually, right? And so I think that we're when you eat more food, I think one of the benefits there is you're providing your body with a signal of abundance. And I also think you're providing your mind, your psychology with a signal of abundance as well. And both of those things work in tandem to be like, okay, your body can calm down a little bit and get out of this stress state of always being both mentally and physically, always being low on energy and always trying to restrict and having that in your mind and in your body. Like your body doesn't want to starve, right? Like it's seeing that and it's like, I'm going to hold on to this fat because this person's not eating anything and we need to survive because we don't know where our next meal is going to come. And so like, I feel like, that plus that physiological change in eating more food. And then also I think it gives people more energy. So they have more energy to move and work out and exercise and stuff like that. And that kind of allows them to burn more energy, right? And like it gets them to the point where maybe they're putting on a little bit more muscle or they're just in general being more active. It's also well proven, like if the more you restrict yourself, like the less just fidgeting that you do, like, the slower your eyes blink, if you're talking about like people are like bodybuilding levels, right? So like, I feel like you need to put yourself in a spot before you start to cut out calories where you're eating more food than you possibly can imagine, right? And that might seem hard to wrap your head around if you're someone who has a lot of weight to lose at the moment. But I guarantee that if you start eating more food, if you have a lot of weight to lose and you're eating 1,100 calories, if you somehow get up to, you end up, getting up to like 2,500 calories or 3,000 calories, and you at the same time are doing all the other lifestyle practices that I just talked about, sleeping and managing your stress and exercising and moving your body and all that fun stuff. Like maybe you put on a few extra pounds of fat, but you're starting from 3,000 calories as opposed to 1,100 calories, right? And if you have a lot of weight to lose, you need to cut out a lot of food to get there. And you can't do that from 1,100 calories, right? So your body's, your hormones and everything is going to be optimized eating enough proper amount of food. And so you put yourself in this state where you're like, you're primed to start losing weight. And that's from like the general population point of view. But I think as an athlete, and for those of us who are very active, and Brad speaks very, eloquently about this, is like, you want to basically eat, recover, and train, right? And then repeat that, right? And so if you're looking for optimal performance, you need to fuel that performance, right? And I've seen huge performance gains in myself, both from a strength point of view, cardiovascular, aerobically. I've hit more PRs and stuff like that, just eating as much food as I can possibly eat. Like I was eating in whole foods carbs, upwards of 3,400 calories, over 400 grams of carbs a day, and just eating and eating and eating and eating. And my performance was, I've never seen better performance out of myself.
How was the adjustment for that? Because I did something, well, not quite like that, but I've been into fasting
Mm.
fairly low carb for quite a while, many years. And I can't say that I had like this like feeling of like my health was going down, but I think the more I learned about just, health in general from certifications or just from like this podcast, I've interviewed Jay Feldman a few times.
Mm.
Um, and obviously talked with Brad a bit about it. And Brad started implementing more food into his. He comes out with a book, 2 meals a day, and then he starts adding on a third meal. But same thing. I mean, we change our views. So I have an
Yeah.
intermittent fasting journal, which I still think I'm not like totally down on some of that stuff. I think it can play a role. I think fasting can play a role in people's
Yeah.
lives. I think you just have to use it strategically. But
Right.
at my point, where I've been low carb and fasting for a while, years and years, I just felt like, especially with my activity level, in general, I just felt like when Brad started going down that road, and I actually listened to your interview, I was like, I'm gonna give that a go and just add in a third meal, and
Mm.
that third meal is about 600 to 700 calories.
Mm.
Interesting is I put on weight initially, but I
Mm.
was just talking to Brad about this on my last interview with him not that long ago. But my weight actually just came back to the normal level with adding 700 calories. So I'm eating more, but my weight stayed the same. It did jump initially, and then it came back down. Is that something similar that happened to you?
Yeah, I think my journey was a little bit so initially, yes. So initially I basically added 700 calories over the course of a year, and I had a DEXA done when I started and a DEXA done when I was at a year later, and I was virtually the same body composition. So I didn't gain
Same.
or lose fat.
Okay. Same weight,
So
or did the weight?
I think I can't remember the exact scale number.
Okay.
It was it had to be relatively the same. Um, within a couple pounds. So I started around, like, I think it was like 9.6% body fat. And then a year later, it was 9.9%, like, which is
Right.
within the error margin of the DEXA scan anyways. So, virtually the same. So yeah, I ate more, but didn't see any additional fat gain. Um, since then, though, when I originally done that, I pushed it further.
Mm,
I kept eating more, and I kept, because my
interesting.
ultimate goal after that was like I really wanted to put on some size. Like I've always been a real lean, endurance athlete. Like, I
Right.
have, I have muscle in my body, but I don't have like, a lot of muscle, right? And being a guy is like, oh, you could always get more muscle, right? What guy doesn't want that, right? And so I'd never spent any time seriously pursuing that goal of just like, I want to build some mass on my body. And so I continued to push it. And eventually the scale responded, like it did go up. I got, I think, start to end, I probably put on 14 pounds or something like that.
Mm. Which is probably
And
not
so,
easy to do. What did you what weight
no,
did you go from?
it's
Yeah,
not
because
like
I think
150 pounds up to like 164, 165 pounds around there. I
okay.
topped out at in January. Um, and so it was, it's not comfortable to eat that amount of food. It is not when you are keeping it restricted within Whole Foods. It's not easy
Yeah, like how
because
much?
the volume of food is massive. It's massive. Like
What
try to
was it?
eat 400 grams of carbs from potatoes, white rice, and fruit and vegetables. Like it's
Yeah.
it's a full-time job. um,
What was a typical day like? Was it within like 3 to 4 meals you would try to get it in or
yeah,
more?
so I my stomach is like very like I can eat and eat and eat, so I have like an unusual advantage of that, and like fiber doesn't particularly bother me either, so I can really go to town on it. But I would get typical day. It was usually it would be 3 meals and then like a dessert, right? So typical day would be I get up, I'd have my breakfast would be a big plate of vegetables, just sautéed vegetables, 3 to 4 eggs, some smoked salmon. I'd have a banana, and then I would also have, I can't remember, some amount of white rice added to that, like purely just I don't really like white rice, but it was just like I need carbohydrates and that's where I'm getting calories from. So just throw white rice onto that was like the solution to that. And then lunch would be again a lot of vegetables, leftover protein from the night before, generally fish, steak, chicken, pork, whatever. I focus on animal proteins for myself. And then I would have a bowl of gluten-free oatmeal with blueberries and strawberries on top, some honey and maple syrup in there. And then dinner would be again protein, vegetables, and then usually I love sweet potatoes, so I'd have sweet potatoes almost every night, and some squash, butternut squash, acorn squash, something like that mixed in. And it's like, like just the amount of potato and squash is probably around 350 grams potato squash. So it's a half a cup of oatmeal was at dinner, at lunch. I can't remember. It's maybe like 200 grams of white rice in the morning with breakfast, plus the banana. And then dessert was another big bowl of berries. Maybe a couple small pancakes with that before bed, and then I would just go to bed. So that was kind of like my typical day when I really got up there in calories. But they were like massive meals, and you could probably find some pictures of that stuff on my Instagram, of what that looks like at some point. So just visually you can see what that is. There's a lot of food.
Okay, and now you're in a bit of a cutting mode, right?
Yeah. In January, I decided like, okay, I'm feeling at this point I've put on enough weight. I'm starting to get a little uncomfortable with the weight. I wasn't I had no signs of like detrimental health effects or anything like that. Like this entire time I had my blood drawn and, everything, metabolic health, everything still looked normal for me. So I had no signs that anything was wrong or whatever. I just started to be uncomfortable, and like eating that much food for that period of time just kind of gets boring and tiring, and like, it's a lot of work, and like, you're always thinking about, I gotta eat this food, and a lot of chewing. So I decided it's time to switch things up. So I decided I'll cut down a little bit. But initially, like, to lose, 10 pounds or so was like nothing, because like I was just cutting out stuff that I didn't even really want to eat, like the white rice for breakfast. Like I don't want that, I live without that. Just cut that. I just made smaller portions, right? And it was still like I still felt full, because before I felt stuffed. And now I just felt full, right? But I dropped like 10 pounds, like it was nothing. Like it wasn't even, I didn't even blink an eye at it, and then after that, I had some grip competitions that I wanted to compete in. And basically I was looking at the weight I was lifting and then the weight classes and stuff like that. And I was around like 155 pounds, and the weight, if I got down to like 154, I could compete in a lower weight class and like have a much better advantage in the competition. So I was like, okay, I'll drop the weight, because I'm pretty much there anyways, and it shouldn't be that hard.
Right.
So I eventually, I have to lift after we get off this podcast, actually. But I weighed in this morning at 147. So and I'm not going to go any lower than 147. I'm purely here at 147 just because I want to make sure I make weight for that. And then I want to go up, because it's honestly, I see it in my performance in the gym.
Yeah.
And I don't need to lose any more weight. So, performance is more important to me. And also I'm right on that edge where I can start to see some of the effects of not eating enough. Like for me, my sleep gets a little wonky every now and then, and I know that's from not eating enough. My mood, I can get like a little lethargic in the afternoon and stuff like that. I just don't have the energy. So I'm starting to see some of those signs where I'm like, I'm right on the border here of like not eating enough food for the amount of work I'm putting out. So I need to go up in calories a little bit after this, but yeah.
And I know you mentioned that in that blog post about maybe eating more calories. You also mentioned eating like adequate protein, which is obviously important. and then, getting in enough steps for the day, and doing some type of resistance training like 3 times a week. I think those are like good principles right there.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think is important, and I think is a real thing, is like this concept of metabolic flux. Like I want you to pump as many calories through the system as possible so you can fuel your activity. And eventually the activity, I want to bolster the calories, but also bolster the activity, because I want that extra food that you're eating to go to a good use, right? And by good use, I mean like, going outside and walking and moving around, stuff like that. But also like, I want you to put on some lean mass. Like if you're going to gain some weight from eating more food, I want most of that to be from lean mass. So I want, the resistance training, at least 2 times a week, preferably 3 times a week, 4 times a week would be good. And those don't have to be like, it doesn't have to be like insane, 30-minute sessions, like, just 30 minutes, a couple sets, a couple lifts, and you should be good. But like, that's enough to get most people to add some muscle to their body, which is like immensely important. Like, I think it's starting to become very, more pronounced, the impact that muscle has to our health. And but it can't be overstated how important it is to add as much muscle mass to your body before you get to, 50 and 60 years old, regardless of how much fat you have. Like, muscle is always, you could not lose a pound of fat and muscle is going to improve your health no matter what, like that's how impactful it is. So yeah, I think, when if you're going to go down this journey of eating more food, I don't want your butt to look like a couch cushion. Like you need to be moving. You need to also be incorporating the other stuff that we, doesn't get a lot of airtime, which is the sleep and stress management. And then like going outside for walks and then exercise, and having a good exercise routine, which is a mixture of both cardiovascular work as well as strength training, 3 to 4 times a week or something like that. And then getting your 10,000 steps a day. I know the 10,000 steps rule is like this fictional thing, but it ends up, honestly, the research tends to play out where you're hitting between 7,000 and 10,000 steps, and that seems to be the sweet spot. So I know it's not that 10,000 step rule is just some marketing thing that came out of Japan, I think, but it ended up being pretty accurate if you follow it.
Yeah, I should start tracking my steps. I really don't. I go for a lot of walks with my dogs. And I also walk when I golf a lot. I was like, I got to start tracking my steps because I don't like to carry my phone on with me a lot of times when I'm on walks. So, I just got to buy like a little counter or something.
Yeah. I mean, the Oura Ring is probably the most uninvasive step tracker I can imagine. It has other benefits too, but also not. Yeah, because it's just a ring, like it wears on your finger, right? So not really bothersome, and it has a bunch of other things it tracks. Also, it costs a couple $100, so there's that. But
I've never used the Oura Ring. I've used the Whoop. Do you like the Oura Ring?
Okay. Yeah, I like the Oura Ring. I think it's great. It is great for sleep, although I can nitpick a little bit about that too.
Yeah.
But it does fairly well tracking your steps. Just so anything else, it does really good with HRV. And resting heart rate and stuff like that, which is important for me. I pay attention to that stuff for myself as an athlete for recovery and things like that. And it also, the new one has a blood oxygen sensor into it and incorporated in it too. So you can track that as well, which is nice. I think it's well worth the investment. I've had one since they first came out, so I've been using it for several years now. I think it's great, but I do like. One of the number one things I look at with my clients when we first start working together is like, okay, I want to know how many steps you're taking. And I realize steps is just, I'm just using it for a proxy for how many times you're moving your body throughout the day. It's not the best thing, but for, it's not the most, I shouldn't say it's not the most accurate thing, but nothing is 100% accurate. So I always tell my clients, like, we're just going to look at this just as a proxy for how often you're moving. If a lot of people I see coming to me, like, they're taking 2,000 to 3,000 steps a day, and whether that's 100% accurate or not, doesn't matter. Like it could be off by a couple thousand steps and you're still not moving enough, right? So you're not even in the ballpark yet. So like, we know we have work to do. And so I harp on them on my clients. Like I'm a huge fan. I walk. I love walking. It's like that is my downtime.
Hmm.
And but I think the benefits of walking are not just from like you went outside and burned some calories. It's just if you're outside walking, you're in nature, you're getting some sunlight, you're moving your body. You know, maybe you're listening to a podcast, you get some education at the same time, or you're just not listening to anything and you're relaxing and letting your mind calm down, which is probably even more important these days.
Hmm.
There's just so many benefits to walking that, I mean, family time, like I go for walks with my kids and my wife and time to talk with them. And like the benefits of just moving your body like that is just far outweighs, any inconvenience. I think is one of the most important things you can do.
I agree. I agree. Do you have a dog?
I do not have a dog. I just have kids. Kids are enough. Young kids are enough for me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I heard it. How old are they?
My son is 6 and my daughter is 9.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
So do you have any races on the horizon, or are you done doing your races?
No, so I'm gonna do a grip competition here. It's virtual, so I'm gonna do it as soon as we end the podcast, and then no rush, obviously. I have plenty of time, but I'm gonna do that, and then actually I'm gonna race next weekend. I have a race, an obstacle course race I'm doing, and then I have one more planned for September. Actually.
What if people want to get into obstacle course racing, what advice would you give to them, and is there a good,
Um,
place to do that?
The advice I would give, um, the number one thing that people struggle with the most in obstacle course racing is their grip strength, right? So there's a lot of like, this is a simple example, like doing the monkey bars, right? Like most obstacle course races have some variation of monkey bars. And so you have to, everyone knows what monkey bars are. They're swinging across monkey bars as a kid, right?
Hmm.
You ask the average adult to do that today, and I guarantee they probably they can't complete that task like they did
Yeah.
when they were a kid. And lots of people, it's the limiting factor is their grip. They can't hold their body up in the air, right? They can't support their body weight with their hands.
Hmm.
And so the number one thing that I would have people work on, because you can walk an obstacle course race, you don't have to run. So like you don't have to run if you don't want to. So most people can walk. The thing that everyone's going to struggle with is their grip. So you know, I think the simplest exercise that I would suggest is, well, the first thing, if you're not strength training, you need to start strength training, because when you're strength training, you're gripping things and holding onto them. And that's going to help probably number one, just as a byproduct of doing strength training. But probably the easiest, most grip type of exercise that's most accessible to people is just hanging from a bar. Right? So if you imagine going to the monkey bars, and maybe you can't do the monkey bars, but at the playground, your local playground, you just go up to the monkey bars and start a timer and hang from there and see how long you can hang for, right? And your goal is to improve that time over the course of several weeks. So you can find a pull-up bar at your gym or whatever, and just, at the end of your workout, you go and hang for a little bit. The other thing you can do to improve that's simple, is just grab a couple dumbbells or kettlebells and walk around and carry them. Do some farmer's carries.
Hmm.
They can be single arm farmer's carries. They can be double arm farmer's carries. It doesn't matter. Just walk with some weight in your hands. And then the other simple thing you could do from a grip point of view, and this is getting a little bit slightly more advanced, but still very accessible as long as you have a gym at home, or a gym that you go to, is just get some plates and you pinch them between your hands. So instead of you just pinch them like a lobster or a crab or whatever.
Right.
They're called plate pinches, and you just do your farmer's carries, pinching the plates together and see how long you can. If you
I
grab,
remember doing those. I haven't done those in forever, but those are
yeah,
tough. Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah. You
Yeah.
grab 25 pounds for most people is going to be incredibly challenging.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be. There's a ton of other grip exercises that I could go over with, but that's where I would start for most people.
And
The other,
yeah, go ahead.
I'll mention one other thing, is because it just popped in my head.
Hmm.
There is this, and it's fairly cheap and accessible. So you can go to on Amazon and type in fat grips, FAT
Oh yeah.
GRIPZ, and there are these things that go around dumbbells or the barbell, and they add several inches to the bar, and so you can't get your hands around them as much. So you can do all the same exercises that you would do with a dumbbell or a barbell, but your grip is the limiting factor because of how thick the bar is. And so for men, they're different colors and they correspond to different thickness. But men, I would start with the blue ones. For females, I would start with the black ones. And it costs like 25 bucks on Amazon. That would be another good way to increase grip strength. And I will say that grip strength is important for everyone, not if you're just doing obstacle course racing, because go look up the research to how grip strength correlates to longevity, and you'll understand why that is.
Yeah. And is there certain, I actually just Googled obstacle course races in Chicago. You got me motivated. Maybe I'll sign up for one. I've never done one, but it'd be fun. There seems like there's quite a bit. There's a Spartan racing and the Tough Mudder. Is there a certain group organization that you go to, or?
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the different companies have gone out of business since COVID. So COVID was a tough time for everyone, obviously, but obstacle course racing seemed to be particularly affected. I don't know what it's like with triathlon or other things like that, but the smaller obstacle course race organizations really struggled post COVID, and a lot of them had gone out of business. Unfortunately, because some of the smaller ones were some of the cooler ones. But so I've obviously Spartan's the number one. They're the biggest. And Tough Mudder used to be a separate brand, but Spartan acquired them. So really Tough Mudder and Spartan are the same, although the way they do their races are very different. They're very different style races. But either one of those is a good jumping off point. Obviously, don't go like, full on, half marathon distance, like stick to the 5K to begin with. That'd be enough for most people. I really encourage people. Spartan has different options where you can do like actually Spartan even has a 3K version now, but I wouldn't necessarily start there because it's really short and intense. But they have Spartan also has like a stadium like brand or whatever. Like they race inside of like football stadiums or major league ballparks and stuff like that, which is really cool, especially if you're a sports fan. So like I really like the Red Sox, so it's really cool to go when they come to Fenway Park to go do the race in Fenway Park. That's really a lot of fun. It's also, if you're not a fan of like trail running and stuff like that, you're running inside a concrete jungle, so it's more accessible for people. That's good. I think Savage is another good brand of obstacle course races. You can find them. I think they're only out kind of east of the Mississippi though. Okay. So West Coast people might not see that. There's the Obstacle Course Racing World Championships, which obviously sounds very intimidating, but if you ever get a chance to check that out, that's awesome. I've done that a few times, and that's like the pinnacle, I think, of obstacle course racing, obviously. And it's the environment, the fans, everything about it is just, they basically take all the best obstacles from around the world and they bring them to this one spot. And so you get really to see what the best of the best look like. But yeah, I would say, Spartan, Savage are probably the biggest brands.
Yeah. Tough Mudder.
Tough Mudder as well, yeah. Tough Mudder is fun if you want to do it with a group of people. So I've done a couple Tough Mudders with like a bunch of friends, and that can be because there's some obstacles in Tough Mudders that you can only accomplish with several people. So like you have to carry this giant log, right? So like it's fun to get together a bunch of people and go and do that. And so that can be a fun group activity.
Oh, you got me going now.
I really encourage people I encourage people to find something that some activity that allows them to express their physicality in some way. I don't care if it's obstacle course racing, it could be golfing, it could be, I got into skiing, this past winter, which is kind of weird because I live in New Hampshire. It's the first time I ever skied. But kiteboarding, something that,
Have you ever done slacklining?
I have been on a slack line. Okay. I completely am horrible at it. I need something to hold on to.
Right. Yeah. It's very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I first did it. I was like in Israel and I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. And then I think I did it one other time, and I have some room in my backyard. So I did put it up, but I've realized that I needed to put up some, you got the slack line that you walk on, but I needed to put the other line up on
The guideline
yeah,
above it.
because
Yeah.
that's the only way to, I think, start.
Yeah, same
But
here. Same here.
yeah, unless you have someone there, I was going to ask
Yep.
my wife to like be there.
Hold my hand.
Yeah, exactly. Hold my hand, help me across this.
Yep.
I do agree. I think having these little things, I think for me, like, I mean, I've been lifting for a long time. I mean, I do other things. I love golf, but like, yeah, I think it's good to have things in your calendar to work towards. And, things like these races could be a good place to start.
Yeah, I think, it's intimidating. These things can be intimidating, like going and doing, but there's always, another person there that's in the same boat as you, right?
Right.
And you can always find, if you find someone to do something with you, like do it as a group, it's so much fun. Like
Yeah.
I also like these types. I think one of the things that I discovered about obstacle horse racing that I really loved, that was a benefit, that wasn't my initial motivation for doing it at all, was the community.
Hmm.
A lot of people talk about how, the best thing about CrossFit was the community aspect of it. And I think one of the best things about obstacle course racing is the same thing as the community aspect of it.
Yeah.
Because when you get there and you go to a race, if you're struggling on an obstacle, like I've helped numerous people. Like I've just stopped and I've been like, okay, I'll help you. I'll boost you over this wall, or try
Right.
it this way. Or, everyone is always there to support you. And probably the best example of this is I did an ultra distance obstacle course race. It was a 50K obstacle
Wow.
course race. And they made you wear this special bib that indicate that you were doing the ultra distance as opposed to everyone else. And so whenever I walked by someone and I had that bib on, they were like, "Oh, go get them, great job, keep going," because they know that you're going to be out there I was out there for like 13 hours, so you're going to be out there forever and doing the obstacles. And when you come up to an obstacle with the bib on, people just step aside and be like, go ahead, go through, and stuff like that. So
Nice.
like the community aspect, and like I have fun training with the other people that do obstacle course racing. Like I have a buddy who has a bunch of land and he's literally built an obstacle course in his backyard. And so like a bunch of us go there, I try to go there every so often to just hang out and train and just, shoot the shit with everyone else. And I think community is so big. It's so underrelated. And I think that again speaks back to this ancestral health point of view. Like we evolved in tribes and we need a community. And the past several years have been, some of that has been taken away. And I think we're having a hard time coming back from that and readjusting. And there's some convenience to not being around people, and people enjoyed it for a while. But I think we do need to have this community. We do need to have people. We need to have people we talk to and see face to face and have fun with. And I think, physical activities like doing a race or whatever, kiteboarding or golfing or, I don't know, playing tennis, you're doing this with other people. And I think that is a hugely underrated piece of those activities and having that in your life. So I think that's important too.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. And I always ask this, we'll finish up with this question. What is one tip you give someone that's maybe looking to get their body back to what it once was 10, 15 years ago? I'm sure we've hit on a lot of different tips today, but maybe what one thing would you give someone to start with?
I said it earlier. I said walking is my favorite pastime, my favorite activity to do, and I think that walking is the number one thing that you can do. And it's just like I said before, it's not it. Yeah, you burn a little bit of calories doing it, but like it can improve your sleep. It can improve your stress. If you do it with other people, it improves your social connection, like we were just talking about, and you have all the vitamin D and being out in nature and.
Right.
I just the benefits, the list is endless, right? It impacts every other aspect of your health, sleep, stress, body composition, hormone balance, all that stuff is all impacted by just going for a walk outside. And it's accessible to everyone. You just need a pair of shoes, and as long as you can move your legs, you can go outside and do it.
Yeah.
I think that is the number one thing that I would tell people to start with. It's not sexy. I'm not going to sell a book about it. I'm not nothing, but I really do believe that it's one of the most important things you can do.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I agree. It's probably one of the things I look forward to the most. Like even when I travel without my dogs, I still enjoy those walks.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's fun. I like doing it with my dogs. But yeah, it's like you get into that habit of just doing it. And it just first thing in the morning, that's what we do. So
Yeah. For sure.
All right, Ryan, where's the best place? Your website, is it rjbhealth.com?
It's actually .coach. So
oh, there you go. You know what? I didn't even see that. Yeah.
I played a little trick on everyone.
Yeah,
So my website
cool.
is rjbhealth.coach.
Okay.
Not .com. So that's my website. The best way to keep up with all the stuff that I'm doing and putting out there, especially if you're not a social media person, you can sign up for my newsletter. So if you go to that website, right on the top, you'll see a newsletter link, and you just pop in your email address there. I'm a firm believer of putting out free content, and I try my best to do it at least once a week, every week throughout the year. So I'm not going to spam you with a whole bunch of stuff. I usually send out a blog post, a short newsletter, and a video every week. Most of that information, if not all of it, is actionable stuff that you can put to work every single day and is free, and I'm not going to charge you for it or anything like that. So if you want to keep up with all the things I'm doing and get some what I hope is quality information, that's where I would send you. If you are a social media person, you can keep up with me there. My health coaching Instagram handle is RJB Health Coaching, RJB Health Coaching. I'll send this all to you so you can throw it in the show notes or whatever.
Yeah, I will.
My personal Instagram, if you want to see health coaching related stuff, but some personal stuff, is Ryan Jason Baxter as well.
Okay.
And then you can Google RJB Health Coaching or my name, and you can find me on Facebook and all that fun stuff too, other places. But yeah, those are the two places I would send people to.
Ryan, well, this was great. Thank you for coming on, and I definitely will put all your contact in the show notes. So if people want to reach out or follow you, or sign up for your newsletter, they can do that. So
yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on. And if, like I said, if anyone has any questions or anything, feel free to direct message or reach out. Happy to chat. Don't be shy.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I understand there are millions of other podcasts out there, and you've chosen to listen to mine, and I appreciate that. Check out the show notes at briangrin.com for everything that was mentioned in this episode. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend or family member that's looking to get their body back to what it once was. Thanks again, and have a great day.